Good morning. This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing for June 24th, 2020. The first case on our agenda is RPC 04002016, and the address is 3613 North Piedmont Street. I do not believe we have an appellant present. Confirmed, so
No, nobody has.
Okay, Ms. Vitus, then if you would proceed with your 8 minutes and tell us about the case.
Will do. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tressa Vitus, and I am the appraiser for 04002016. The subject property is a one-story brick home built in 1956 with an effective age of 1996. The home has 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bath. The appellant submitted an appeal because they felt based on recent sales in Arlington, their property was assessed too high. The property has had no improvements, renovations, or additions since its purchase and has no external amenities such as a deck, porch, or patio. The appellant gathered sales of homes with similarly assigned elementary, middle, and high schools to the subject property. The sales submitted to the department by the appellant are not considered to be comparable for a variety of reasons. 03060-005 was an off-market sale and not considered to be a valid sale. 05016-003, 02085-038, and 02019-0110 were all in different neighborhoods with lower location multipliers. 03047-123 was purchased by the Delta Concrete Corporation and currently has active permits for a demo and a new single-family dwelling. It is viewed to be a land sale and is not a valid sale. The appellant also submitted comparables and is determining value based on the average assessment of these 4 comparables, which is not an accurate valuation method given that the assessment comparables have different effective ages and descriptive factors on the improvement that affect the value. When conducting mass appraisal, the focus is on valuing like properties that are grouped in neighborhoods and geographically close to each other and not by school zones. School zones can span many different neighborhoods with a variety of different properties, and due to their range are not a driving factor in valuations. Any impact that a school zone has is reflected in the sales. Last year in 2019, the subject property was reviewed for similar reasons. It was determined that the assessment was incorrect. The appropriate changes were made and the home was revalued. The overall condition of the property is in line with the year built of 1956 and an effective age of 1996. Nothing was changed during the 2020 review. The increase in value came from the overall neighborhood increase that was applied due to the annual sales analysis. The 503034 neighborhood had a 5% increase, while the subject property had a total increase of 4.8%. I'd also like to note that all external features on comparable properties are added to the record and reflected in the home's overall value. After completing an inspection and looking at comparable sales in the neighborhood, I found the assessment to be fair and equitable. I recommend that the 2020 assessment be confirmed at $1,026,100. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from any board members? Mr. Matzkin.
This is for the department. Excuse me. Your discussion of the appellant's comparables and why the variety of them weren't appropriate as comparables. Did you discuss that with the appellant?
I did, and he did not fully understand, I think, what I was saying. He felt that the school zones and grouping and finding homes with similar schools in them was a better way to find comparable sales.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's great.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here. I believe we have, oh no, never mind. I'm not going to interrupt. Other questions from board members?
I just joined the meeting.
And, oh, you are the property owner. Okay, well, since we've only had one question, then if you want to tell us in 8 minutes about your property, we'd be happy to listen to you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning to everyone. Again, I would like to thank the board members for taking the time to hear this appeal and for reviewing the documents we submitted in April at the time we filed the appeal. By way of background, we purchased this property in September 2011 and are appealing the department's increase in the assessed tax value of the property from 983,700 last year to 1,026,100 for 2020. Over 73% of the increased assessment comes from an increase in the improvement value, despite the fact that we have not made any additions, expansions, or renovations to the home since we purchased it in 2011. As discussed in detail in our written submission of April 15th, we feel that our property has been assessed in 2020 at more than its market value based on prices of similar properties sold during the analysis period. Moreover, we feel that our property has also not been appraised in a manner equitable with similar properties during the analysis period. Finally, the data on comparable property sales during the analysis period that we identified closely aligned with the tax assessments of properties identified to be similar to our property. Thus, analysis of each of these two distinct data sets yields the same conclusion, namely the department's 2020 assessment significantly overstates the value of our property. The differences in the department's proposed comparable sales and those identified in our analysis stem in large part from the department's exceedingly narrow geographic view of the appropriate neighborhood for selecting comparable sales. Not surprisingly, given the smaller sample of available sales to the department during the analysis period, their proposed comparable property sales show significant differences in key determinants of market valuation when compared to our property. These differences are readily seen when comparing Table 1 on page 2 with Table 3 on page 5 of our April 15th memo. For example, all three of the department's proposed comparable sales have larger interior finish space, whether measured by the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, or total finished square foot of the property. In contrast to our property, which has 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, all three of the proposed comparable properties of the department have 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. 2 of the 3 proposed comparables have substantially larger total finished square foot, one approaching 1,900 square foot, the other exceeding 1,800, compared to the 1,533 square foot for our property. Moreover, all 3 properties proposed by the comparables have external structures such as patios, decks, porches, and other additional facilities that are altogether missing in our property. We have provided the department with photographs of some of these external facilities for 2 of the comparable properties being proposed by the department. Exhibits 1 and 2 are photographs of 3687 North Nelson Street, which has a large flagstone patio with a retaining wall, as well as 2 separate car garages. The property 3744 North 30th Place has by far the most extensive array of external structures that far exceeds what would be typical of a rambler with total finished space comparable to our property. For example, this comparable has 3 wood decks, one of which is described as a gazebo, 3 brick patios, and a large enclosed porch. We have provided 4 photographs of all these structures for the 3744 North 30th Place with our submission. Finally, in light of these significant differences between the comparable property sales and our property, the sales price of these properties would overstate the market value of our property. The department has not provided any explanation as to how they arrived at their 2020 assessed value of our property based on the sales prices of these 3 comparable sales. For example, 3744 North 30th Place sold for $1.14 million, substantially above the 2020 assessed value proposed by the department of $1.026 million. Because of all of the external facilities described above, in addition to the greater number of bedrooms and baths, the department has not provided any explanation of how the assessed value of $1.026 million relates to or can be derived from the comparable sales price of $1.14 million. In contrast to the narrow view of the appropriate geographic neighborhood for selecting comparable sales the department has proposed, we have defined close geographic proximity between our property and proposed comparable properties by comparing the assigned elementary school, middle school, and high school to the different properties, because we know that quality of local schools are a key determinant of property values. Based on that approach, we identified 5 comparable property sales during the analysis period, and Table 1 and table immediately below it on page 2 of the memo summarize key characteristics of our property and the proposed comparable sales. I will not go into detail in the discussion of the similarity between the assigned schools, which we discuss in detail in the memo, beyond pointing out that the middle school and the high school for all 5 of the comparable sales are identical to our property. Briefly, when you look at the 2 tables on page 2 of the memo, you can see that the 5 comparables have the same number of bedrooms as well and an additional bathroom compared to our property. In fact, these 5 comparable properties are much more closely aligned in key characteristics with our property. We have proposed that the average sales price of $961,000, based on the 5 comparable sales we identified, or the midpoint of the range of values of $960,000 would be a far more reliable basis for assessing the tax value of our property. Finally, we also identified 4 properties comparable to our property for comparing their 2020 tax assessments to evaluate whether the proposed assessment was made in a manner equitable with these similar properties. And we concluded that the assessments of these 4 properties was $969,000.
Okay, sir, I'm going to need you to wrap up. Your time is up.
Which is very similar to the comparable sales we identified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Alrighty, we're back to questions from board members. Mr. Metzgen.
I'll follow up with my initial question before our appellant arrived and recap that very quickly, but it's still a follow-on question for the department. I asked before the appellant was able to join us about determining a neighborhood based on proximity and not public schools, access to public schools. And that's standard practice throughout, this is a question, but a minor question, standard practice throughout the American assessment, public assessment community, right? It's not schools, but rather proximity houses one to another based on sales patterns. Is that right? And then I want to follow up.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so the other related, directly related point the appellant brought up was determining the variables among various properties such that they would be, other than public schools, comparable, proximity, neighborhoods, and public schools. And I wanted to know if you've discussed the programs that are, the computer programs, software programs that are used by the Department of Assessments, and I presume throughout the country, in order to, in our case, get 30,000 residences to mix and match based on their various characteristics, such that we make some intelligent, appropriate mass appraisal determination on each of those 30,000 residences. Is that something you've just, that was a run-on. Is that something you've discussed with the appellant? If not, could you give a sentence or two on how that software works or where it comes from?
I do believe we discussed it, but just to kind of explain better, we use softwares that actually, if possible, could my supervisor explain it, because he might be able to do it a little better than I am. Derek.
Yeah, sure. How you doing? Derek DeBay, residential supervisor. I'm Tressa's supervisor, and I've also reviewed the case. Yeah, just for informational purposes, We use CAMA software, which is computer assisted mass appraisal software, which allows us to figure out the cost to replace each structure. So in this case, it was brought up that there are many exterior features on other properties. And what we do is we physically visit these properties. We'll measure each feature. We'll measure the improvements that are on the land. And we'll sketch all those into our CAMA software system and figure out the cost to replace those features and improvements, and then we take out depreciation. And once we find that, that gives us our cost approach value. And then what we do is we research the sales in each neighborhood. We don't use school zones because school zones can cover, vast parts of a county. So we focus more so on neighborhoods and like properties in those neighborhoods. And we research the sales through MRS and through visiting the properties and talking to homeowners. And then we use the sales ratios to apply a location multiplier to our cost approach. So it's a blended approach of the cost to replace with the sales comparison approach.
Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, other questions from board members? No?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Ms. Vitus, if you would take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes. Again, the home was reviewed last year in 2019, where adjustments were made. This year in 2020, no adjustments were made to the record. Any increase that came to value came from the overall sales analysis, overall increase from the sales analysis. I recommend that the 2020 assessment be confirmed at $1,026,100.
Okay, thank you. And sir, would you take a minute to wrap up and tell us any last comments you want us to know?
I would like to say that the 5 comparable properties we selected are within a very close radius of our property, maybe within 2 to 3 miles. So it's not as though the schools that we use to make sure that the assigned schools were similar led us to select properties that were very far away geographically from where our property is located. And finally, we have explained in the memo why we think that the off-market sale and purchase by the construction company for 2 of the comparable properties would not be relevant factors in excluding them as reliable comparables for assessing the tax assessment for our property in 2020. Finally, we do note that there is a convergence in the 2 approaches we took, comparable state and the tax assessments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, it is now just among the board members. What does everybody think?
Well, I'm going to start with this. I know the information that the appellant provided is very compelling, very extensive. I know that he looked at all the other properties to actually see physically what was there and what was not. But looking overall, not only at the neighborhood, but the comparables that were provided on the sales that are happening in the area, I think everything is pretty much in line. I know there's a difference, a few thousands to the neighbor and to the other properties, but there are going to be. That's what we see all the time. There's not going to be a specific number, equal number to all. So I don't see where we can make any adjustment on this.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, just from the standpoint of equalization, when you look at the 3 comps that the county used, they're in the neighborhood. I understand the appellant using a school district and going further out. But from a standpoint of tax assessing and equalization, that really would kind of put the whole thing out of skew. But when you look at the 3 comps, and the appellant brought up a good point that especially the one on 30th Place is a much larger, far more niceties, if you will, to the property. But when you look, I mean, the building assessment, it's over $100,000, $104,000 higher. So I think that that's all weighed out there. So I really am struggling to see where we could do any kind of adjustment. Other thoughts?
I echo you too. And I just want to add that the property owner did a great analysis, but it's not in tune with standard practice throughout the country on what decision criteria to use. If we knew nothing, they'd be perfectly appropriate decision criteria, but the pros over decades have decided that different criteria are used, and that's what, of course, we need to be bound by.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Any other comments? No? Mr. Yates, your mic is off if you're talking.
Oh. I don't hear Mark.
I don't hear Mark at all.
And he's unmuted.
No. Okay. All right. Well, then with no further discussion, I'm going to move to confirm the county at $1,026,100.
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second by Mary Hogan. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Yates? Okay. Opposed? Okay. It is unanimous. It's 5-0. The county has been confirmed at the $1,026,100 for 2020. Thank you, sir. Okay, moving to the next case. Do we have the appellant? Yes, we do. Okay.
Christiani, yes, he's here. So
Okay, so the next case on the agenda is RPC 13044-047, 5257 North Carlin Springs Road. And Mr. Ash, you have to turn your microphone on. Ashatani? Sir, you have to unmute your microphone. Mr. Ashatani.
Speaking, ma'am.
There you
Go
go.
ahead.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Ashatani. All right, if you would start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property, sir.
The property is located at the 5257 North Collinger Spring, about the by intersection of the Greenbriers and the Collinger Spring.
Mm-hmm.
The house is 12 years old and is built in the 2000, finished by 2008, and located between the 5251 North Collinger Spring to the left, and to the right 5275 North Collinger Spring. And the value of the houses in that area that well, before I go to the value of that, let me just go through the structure of the house. And is a three-story, and with about 3,500 square foot space living, with the two-car garage in the back of the house, and that's as you all know about the house, because it's been showed. I can't explain anything. It's an average house. It's an average house, but the value that the county is set up for that house, in the past 4 times, 3 times I rejected, and the real estate agent from you guys come in there and look at the house. By the time they come on in, they said, wow, what a beautiful Persian rug you have. Oh, okay. is a Persian rug is the value for the houses. Apparently, to your estimator or value, or what a beautiful crown molding you have. Okay, I didn't know that the crown molding has a value, bring a value to the house. So they look at it and they go, and I see the house has valued for over 1.4 million to 1.34 million at this point. I have the two companies that they are my friend, and they are, came to look at the house. The house has a 3-bedroom, 4-bath, and a 3-bedroom. 3-bedroom in the second floor, and in the first floor is a living room, dining room, and a kitchen is. And this is the property. They are looking at it, they're saying to me that this house is not valued, they're wrong, they're not valued, nobody is going to pay $1.34 million for this house. The maximum for value of this house is not more than, $1,050,000 to $1,100,000, because the neighbor behind it, beside it, is not, there is no value for the houses into the neighbor that it's going to, give the value for this house. For example, 5251 is valued for $650,000. And then 5275, which is the house is like the Hotel San Francisco is about 12 people living in that house, and they renting it to the several people. I don't want to say anything about who they are and what they are. And the traffic in that house is so much that there is no, nobody is going to, pay that amount of the prices for my house. This is the way that we feel it. And down to the 5275 and 5277 is $685,000 devalued by the county. These are the neighbor. Behind us, which is the 5th Street, is houses behind me, which is in the 5th Street, is a $550,000 by the county. Is an old house and is about 40, 45 years old. The neighborhood is not a neighborhood that it's going to give the value for this house for $1.4 million. That's my objection on that. And that's my opinion. And everybody is going to look at it because has the true column in front of it doesn't mean that it is worth, it valued that much. That's the way that we feel about it. That's all I can say about it.
You're muted, Mary.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ulysses, if you would speak to us for the county.
Not a problem. Good morning, board. Nice to see everyone again. My case this morning has a long history of appealing with no new supporting documents really being provided. On this particular go-around, an exterior property inspection was conducted on 3/10/2020 at 10 a.m. with Ibrahim Ashtani, the homeowner, and Travis Shelton as a second appraiser. The actual interior inspection was denied due to coronavirus concerns, understandably so. So I was only able to do the interior inspection from the front door, the back door, and the side door. The county felt comfortable moving forward with this case given the extensive review history resulting in previous interior inspections. From my limited inspection, it seemed like nothing had changed, nor did Mr. Ashtani mention anything being changed or updated. So a quick description of the property is that it's a 2-story brick house with 3 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, and a finished basement. It was built in 2005 with an effective age of 2005 and a quality of excellent. The appellant feels his assessment should be more in line with the average property for his neighborhood. The appellant's property is clearly superior when compared to the average property on Carlin Springs in his neighborhood. The subject's square foot alone puts it within the 5 largest properties in the neighborhood. The closest indication of value the county can provide is sales comp number 1. It's smaller and inferior compared to the appellant's property, but still commanded a sales price over 1.2. The reason the subject property is graded the way it is largely due to the fact that through connections or himself, Mr. Astani did all the work himself, and as a result, he disagrees with the costing tables provided by our CAM system. The appellant's neighborhood, county recognizes as 504054, increase on average of 5.63% due to sales that occurred in the neighborhood during the analysis period. The property's grade and effective age appear in line with the neighborhood and current condition. An exterior inspection was conducted and no changes were made to the record. As a result of the review, the inspection and information submitted, the county determined that the assessment was fair and equitable based on the neighborhood analysis that was conducted and recommends no change for 2020.
Okay, thank you, sir. Questions from board members? Mr. Penaranda?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Ms. Hogan, I don't see you. No questions? Okay, Mr. Ulysses, if you have anything else that you want to finish up to tell us?
You want me to wrap up?
Yep, please.
Okay. The county's position on this case is that the subject is larger and more improved than the average property in the neighborhood. As stated, this is one of the 5 largest properties in the neighborhood. Sales comp number 1 is the best indicator of value for the neighborhood for this particular property. Mr. Astani's ability to contract work at a good price is not reflected in our costing tables. You know, we do mass appraising and we apply the same costing tables for everyone. As a result of the review and the inspections, the county feels that the 2020 assessment is fair and equitable as it stands.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I disagree
Mr. Ashtani,
with
if
you.
you take a minute to wrap up.
I disagree with him. I remember the gentleman that came to the house. By the first time he looked at the inside the house, he said, "Wow, what a beautiful crown molding you have." If that beautiful crown molding to you was the value of the houses, I don't think so. The value of the house is whatever the neighbor has to be bring it up. This house is not going to bring up if there is a $1.34 million you assess for that is not going to worth it. It's not worth the value of that. That's all I can say. That is.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, it's just among the board members now.
I guess I will start again. You know, overall, when you look at the property, it's a nice big property in the middle of smaller homes. And the first thing, yeah, you look at it and say, how can a property of this, you know, is there really the value there for this property based on just looking at the homes that are there? It doesn't look like it. But, you know, looking at what the house has inside and space that it has, I don't see that, you know, to me, it's one of those white elephants in, like in many other areas that we see sometimes. Looking back at the assessments, you know, from 2013 to now, it's been assessed, and I think the increases are being applied in a way that we've seen that increase is going up on most homes. There is no other information that the appellant provided. You know, I wish there were maybe other comparables, other homes that we could look at, but you know, we have nothing, and it is the burden of proof on the appellant to provide more information to make any change. So I don't see how we can make any adjustments here.
Okay.
Agreed.
Other comments? Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the department's determination of evaluation of this property at $1,334,800.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second by Mary Hogan. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Mr. Ashitani, it is confirmed at $1,334,800 for the year. Thank you, sir. Okay, the third case on the agenda is RPC 19018 019 3514 7th Street North. I believe I saw the appellant earlier.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there you are. Thank you, sir. Okay, if you want to start and tell us in 8 minutes about your property.
Sure. I'm going to share the screen with you. Please tell me if you can see the slides.
Okay.
Can you see the slides?
I don't see any sides.
I bring the document.
Hold on a second. Just give me a minute. Can you see the slides now?
We can now, yes, sir.
So I'd like to begin that one of the purposes of the sale of the assessing the values of the properties is to provide a similar tax to properties that have the same sale prices. However, unfortunately, this is not observed for our property. There are multiple properties, and some are included in our comparison, which have very close sale prices to ours, but they're assessed considerably lower. Moreover, even some properties with higher sale prices than ours are assessed considerably lower. We provided with 4 comparables properties, which were chosen to very closely to match sale price of our house, and their sale price is 99% of the sale price of our house on average. The land values assessed for these properties is nearly identical to our land value as assessed at 99.8%. However, the improvements on these properties are remarkably lower assessed than our property, $340,000 on average versus our proposed assessment of $403,000. Our property is not in a better condition than these comparables, as it might be apparent from such assessment. It is actually in much worse condition, and the MLS photos attached to our appeal confirm that. I will show you some of these photos in this presentation, but there's a full document which compares them based on MLS information, because all were sold in the assessment period. Our property was built in '97 and experienced absolutely no renovations or updates since then. It has everything original, 23-year-old builder grade, cabinetry, finishes, fixtures. Most mechanicals are original and past their expected life. There's a lot of deferred maintenance across the house. Inaccurate assumptions may lead to overassessment, and in our case, it appears that such assumptions play a major role because the assessment model is based on replacement cost and depreciation, and the replacement costs are much lower for our house than comparables who had major renovations and additions with high-end construction materials and would cost more to replace. Besides, normal depreciation assumes that average level of homeowner maintenance applies, but our property was not adequately maintained and consequently appreciated more. As an example, I give you one comparable here in more detail, which is in both our proposed comparables and used by county assessors. They grade the house as good, and ours is very good, but however, this is not the correct information based on photos. The house had major renovation with everything overhauled, and it was done with high-end finishes and construction. It has finished basement. It has 3.5 baths versus our 2.5 baths. However, its improvement is valued as $321,000, $82,000 lower than our proposed assessment. It's evident that replacement cost on such a well-overhauled property is considerably higher than ours. And similar conclusions would be done if you analyze in detail 3 other comparables. A couple of slides just to illustrate. This is our kitchen. Everything is original, builder grade, cabinetry, no backsplash, laminates, basic floors, builder grade appliances. These are examples of kitchens in other properties. They're all overhauled, hard top surfaces, high-end appliances, fixtures, everything has been redone and redone very expensively. similar to master bedroom as an example. This is our property. Everything is original, cabinetry, very basic plastic shower enclosure. These are baths in other properties. They have, glass shower enclosures, custom tile work, custom showers. Everything is high end. County responded to our request to reassess property that this assessment is in line with the neighborhood. However, looking at the detailed response, the average assessment in the neighborhood is highly skewed upward by assessments exceeding sale prices by large amounts. Out of 20 sales that they submitted in their response to us, 10 or 50% exceed sales prices. They're assessed up to 109% of the sale price, with average of 103.8. The remaining 9 properties assessed to sale averages 94.8, excluding our property. This latter group is in line with our proposal and with comparables, which average 94% assessed to sale. So in summary, I would conclude that replacement cost of our property is overvalued due to incomplete information about its condition relative to comparables. I arrived to fair value of $343,905 as a fair value of improvement assessment based on average for comparables, $340,025, plus I added prorated difference from the price. Our price is higher by $12,250, of which I allocated 31.7%, or $3,880 an additional value to the structure. The comparables are not an exception. There are many more properties like that. We selected those to very closely match sale price. There are multiple other properties within 1 to 1.5 miles from our property, which have sale price even above ours and yet are assessed below ours in terms of value of the improvement. Such properties assessed to sale is even lower, about 91%, but we are not using them in this comparison. I'm just illustrating you that this is not an exception. The problem is pervasive. And finally, I would say that for fair taxation, I think it would be appropriate that properties with similar sale price, not just similar assessment, similar sale price in actuality have similar tax. And decreasing improvement value for our house would make this fair with comparables of similar sale price. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
That concludes
sir.
my presentation.
Mr. King, if you'd like to tell us about the property.
Good morning, board. I'll be presenting for the county. There was no inspection of the property done to coronavirus, but the property was visited back in November of 2019 for an exterior inspection by the previous appraiser. The property appears fairly correct due to the 1997 construction and the information gleaned from the sale listing. The previous appraiser did change the grade from very good plus to very good to match the neighboring property, 3516 7th Street North, which resulted in an overall decrease for the property from 2019 to 2020. While some of the appellant's comparable properties do have renovations that give them a more recent effective age or a higher quality than the subject property, each assessment is made up of multiple variables that impact the final assessment. So, for example, appellant's comparable property number 2, 2642 Robert Walker Place, has a higher quality at very good plus and a higher effective age of 2015. It only has 1,908 square feet of finished square footage compared to the subject property's 2,527 square feet. Similarly, appellant's comparable number 3, 2035 North Taylor Street, has the same quality of the subject at very good, but only 1,619 square feet of finished square footage and no garage. Ultimately, $60,000 in variation across properties ranging from $1.1 to $1.2 million can be accounted for by any number of factors in evaluation, be it base square footage, finished square footage, quality, or effective age. The appellant's comparable properties actually do an adequate job of affirming the county's assessment, combined with the appellant's own sale price of $1,156,000 against the 2020 assessment of $1,138,000. As well, the county's comparable shows strong sale prices for even smaller and older houses in the neighborhood. Additionally, assessment to sale ratios vary widely across the neighborhood, across a neighborhood with varying styles of housing stock. The appellant's assessment to sales ratio is 98.5% compared to the neighborhood's average ratio of 99.5%. The county doesn't chase sales or try to have our assessments always reflect accurately what the sale price was. We just stand by our data and do our analysis from that. So as a result of the review, the information in the county's records, and the appellant's own sales price, the county believes the 2020 assessment is fair and equitable and does not recommend a change for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Matzkin.
I have a couple. First one is for the department. I went through, I was just reading it again. I didn't see it. I'm sorry if it's there. It's unusual for a fairly new improvement to devalue in depreciated in value. And this one did by 13%. Could you explain why that is?
So as I said, the quality was reduced last year from very good plus to very good. So the neighboring house, I believe they were built at the same time by the same builder, was at very good. So we just dropped that down in line to make the two properties the similar quality. There was also a reduction in the LM for the neighborhood for the year. So improvements in the neighborhood went down for the year also,
Really?
so, which is a double whammy of changes.
So even though the overall assessment went up marginally, 2.2%, the location, that's amazing. Okay, fair enough. I just didn't see that written. The other thing, the appellant for the department, the appellant said that the quality of this house isn't so, it's builder grade this and builder grade that, but its quality isn't, I'm asking, the quality is based more on basic construction materials than finishings like cabinetry and bathroom fixtures. What do you take into account making his very good versus the comps which are lesser quality than that? Could you give a sentence or two?
Sure, it'll take into account finishes on the property, so moldings, materials used, even what kind of spaces the house has compared to older houses. But we also take into account, the foundation is newer, any kind of mechanical systems are going to be newer. So if a house in 1997, the foundation, the whole structure of the house is qualitatively different than a house that's built in 1939, but might have, say, kitchen renovation or something like that.
Thanks.
And it bears out in the market. So, at some point we have to acknowledge that difference in those houses.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? No?
I don't have any.
Okay. Mr. Yates? No? Okay, Mr. King, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Thank you. The appellant and the county's comparable properties do a good job of affirming the subject properties assessment. Again, within $1.1 to $1.2 million properties, $60,000 can be accounted for by various components of each property. However, the appellant's own recent purchase price over its current assessment supports the county's valuation as fair and equitable. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't see the appellant. Is he still here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. There you are. If you would take a minute to wrap up, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I would still point your attention to the fact that the assessments in the neighborhood are far exceeding the assessment of relative to sale price. And the key thing with the comparables is that they have the same sale price. Therefore, we would be expected to pay the same real estate tax. So this principle still stands, and I understand that the model requires inputs and can generate a wide range of outcomes. However, even minor deviations, minor inaccuracies in such case may lead to large swings in valuation. So we have to rely on sale price as the most accurate and relevant signal. In this case, taking into account the model valuation and the sale price of the comparables point to our close proximity, and I think this real estate tax should be assessed on comparable matter.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, it's just among board members. What does everybody think? Mr. Matzkin?
Thanks. I'll start. A couple of observations. One is that I find the sales prices are really good comparables, although it's certainly one of the sales is, the improvement's so much less, but yet the prices are holding up. And more importantly, the sales prices as a ratio of the assessment, or the assessments as a ratio of the sales prices, I don't know if that matters, are very close, higher than usual. This is in the high 90 percentile, which I think is the appraiser's dream. And so these comparables seem to be really, including the appellants, so these comparables seem to be very relevant. The last thing is that nobody brought up, the appellants' access to Metro, which isn't so terrific today, but hopefully it will be soon, is incredibly superior to the comparables. I mean, there's a big difference. That is a hike from a block in from Route 50 to Virginia Square Metro versus 7th and, I don't know what that is, Lincoln or Norway, Norwood. So there's got to be added value to the appellant's home just because it is so easy to get to Metro. So I'm feeling good about this assessment.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I'll go with it. I mean, in the previous case, I was complaining that there was no information provided by the appellant. In this case, we do have a lot of information and a lot of numbers, which, I appreciate that the appellant did that. However, we don't necessarily do assessments by doing averages or, by total numbers or square footage or any type of average. So looking at the sales, including the sale of the subject property, I think everything is in line. I don't see where any change can be made. If you look at averages like the appellant did, yeah, you're going to find ways to making, a change, either up or down, but I don't see how we can make any change just based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with what Jose said. I think even the sale of the subject property is back to your assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mark, we can't hear you. Do you support or? Okay. All right. Well then, so you don't have anything contrary to it. So, okay. Well then, if that being said, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move that we confirm the assessment at $1,138,500.
All right. I'll second that. A motion is second by Mary Dooley. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It is unanimous. The county, sir, has been confirmed at $1,138,500.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And I believe I saw Mr. Gonzalez in the queue.
Yes, he's here.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Let me just get this up. Okay, so the final case for today will be RPC 05056096, 2101 North Monroe Street. And Mr. Gonzalez, you can start and tell us about your property. Mr. Gonzalez, you gotta unmute your mic. Now click on the icon that says a microphone. There you go. I can't hear you. Dave, do we know why we can't hear him?
Can you phone back in?
Maybe he should just phone in.
Can you call in?
I sent him the number.
Yeah, Yes, Colin. Can anyone confirm if he's in the queue?
No, not yet. Mary, do you think you would be able to hear him if he calls at my phone at my desk and I put him on speaker?
Sure.
Okay, let me let him know.
Please try to unmute with number 6.
Lucy, thanks very much for that. Let's go to Florida now. We're calling Florida there, where the governor is still resisting statewide
Yeah, star 6.
Another record of cases. You're absolutely right, Bobby. And we just talked
Star
about
6.
I just emailed him.
the number of hospitalizations of younger people who are less sick.
Oh, I see.
Rosa, have you sent him the number?
Yes, and I also told him to send me his if he wants, and I'll call him, but he hasn't answered to either one. Can you see me now? Your phone number, Mr. Gonzalez.
Did he give you the number?
No, Mr. Gonzalez, he said yes, but he didn't give me anything. Mr. Gonzalez.
Rosa, hold on. The number's in the chat. One moment.
Okay.
It should be phoning you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I will make as brief a presentation as I can.
No, take your 8 minutes, sir.
The appeal of the department's decision I'm making is because I believe it is not uniform in its application. The data I submitted, the assessment on my property was $573,870. The unit right next to me is also a 2-bedroom den in identical formation as my unit, with 2 exceptions. One is a bay window, which gives my unit 29 more square feet than my neighbor. And secondly, I have an additional parking space. There is no aftermarket for parking spaces. They were valued at $10,000 per space. So I was faced with it looks like there's a $54,000 assessment differential for the same building on the same floor with 2, and I would say that's the greatest comparability level you could get is these 2 units. I think if you do the analysis and you net out the $10,000 for the parking space, there's a differential assessment on a square foot basis of $25 on my unit versus the other unit. Just to be clear, both units have original owners. They were purchased within 30 days of each other when the building opened in 2013. And in essence, that the department had provided comparables. I don't argue with the comparables, but I do argue with the methodology and its application. Because if those comparables are used to assess my unit, what comparables are being used to assess almost an identical unit next to me? And should there be a difference? Yes. Should I be paying more? Yes. But I believe that's outside of a zone of reasonableness at netting up the additional parking space. It's a $44,000 difference. That is substantial to the value of the apartment. And I will leave it at that, and I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Telleria Boudier, if you would like to tell us about the property.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Taffy, and I'll be representing the department today. The subject's property is located at the Dominion Heights condo. It is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,249 square feet unit. Another appraiser and I were able to go visit this property back in February as part of our review process. We saw that the interior has not been renovated at all. It's actually not uncommon to see non-renovated units here because it's a 2013 building. So the 2013 makes it the newest building in the Lee Highway East area. So as he stated in his application, and as he just mentioned, the appellant believes he's not assessed equitably with similar units. He's referring to unit specifically 302. Now, 302, as he stated, 2 beds, 2 baths, 1,220 square feet. And although this unit appears to be similar, it's not. It's actually considered a separate model. And unit 302, when it sold in 2013, it sold for $526,000. And then the subject's unit in 2013 sold for $573,870. Given the big difference in those prices, we can deduct that it was more desirable because it came in at a higher value. Another important thing to note is that in this condo, there's only 66 units. And of those 66 units, we have 39 different residential models. So there's only one unit that is the exact same as his unit, which is the unit below it. Unit 203, 2 beds, 2 baths, 1,249 square feet. It's actually on the comp sheet, it's comp number 3. It's currently assessed at $572,900. There is a $20,000 difference there, which is accounted for $10,000 as a floor adjustment, which the subject has, and an additional parking space, which is also $10,000. This unit, Unit 203, last sold in March of 2018 for $575,000. And like I said, it's assessed right now close to $572,000. So we're almost reaching 98% of market value. It's also important to know for the board that our assessments are the most accurate when the building is first built. So when the building is built, it sells the majority of its units, and that's when we can really make sure that, you know, our assessments are as close to those market values. So for the 2014 analysis, we were able to observe all of those sales. And we had a fixed assessment for 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. There was no changes, no increases, no decreases in that assessment. It stayed at $560,900. Last year in 2019, there was a 3% increase because that comp number 3 sold. And as I stated earlier, 203 sold for $575,000. So given the limited sales we've seen over the years, this year we saw an assessment to sales ratio of 94%. Therefore, the entire building received a 4% increase. So I would like the board to know that where we normally see tiers in this building is actually set up in a really different way, where there's only one exact replica of the model. Unit 203, which I stated before, sold in 2018. Therefore, the appellant's estimate of value is actually given really low, and it is the department's recommendation to confirm the assessment at $592,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? No?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. This is to the appellant. Is Unit 302 also on the same side as your unit, or is it across the hallway?
No. So two things. One, it's directly adjacent to my unit.
Okay.
Secondly, with respect to what the department raised on sales value, I think it's really important to know that the building opened in March of 2013. The sale that occurred there was with an owner.
Excuse me, I'm going to let you do that during your wrap up. If you could just answer the question for the board member. Thank you, sir.
It's immediately adjacent, and it is the same layout except for a bay window that exists in my unit. That is the difference in physicality between my unit and the adjacent unit, is a bay window that creates 29 square additional feet.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had for the department is there any adjustments for views in this building or no?
No, there's no current view adjustment. There's only a floor adjustment. It's only highway. On one side, you'll see the Safeway and the shopping center right there. On the other side, you will see Lee Highway. So there's no current view adjustment at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from board members? No? Okay, let's see. I'll have the county, if you would go ahead and take a minute to wrap up, please.
Of course.
Go ahead.
Is that for the county or for myself?
The county goes first.
So I ask that the board please keep in mind the sale of Unit 203. This unit is exactly like the subject. Unit 302, even though it's the subject's neighbor, it is not the same. Unit 203, which is below the subject and has one less parking space, sold for $575,000. We are not going to get a sale that is as indicative as this sale. The sale is indicating that the increase is warranted. Therefore, I ask the board to please confirm the assessment as fair and equitable at $592,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, very quickly. 2 points. One, Unit 2 that's sold at $556, sold 30 days post my sale. That's important because the building had opened and the developer was looking to get out. So, I credit them. They got a great price, and I would say they got it below market value. Second, the department makes a distinction without a difference, and what I'm saying is marketing materials should not be the distinction on difference. Physically, layout-wise, are exactly the same. Whether they advertise it as something else, they have the same view, they're looking in the same direction, they're exactly the same units. To have a $50,000 difference, I think it is unfair and inequitable and not a uniform application of the rules. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, it's just among the board.
Let me start. I'm struggling a little bit with this unit because, yeah, I can see, when the developer listed or put this building for sale, if they have so many different models, you're going to have different incentives, different tastes, and prices are going to be all over the place. But now that let's say that we have a resale market. If nothing was resold in the building, which, we had a couple sales, but looking from the point of view as a real estate broker, are we going to take into consideration what the price it was when it sold 10, 15 years ago? I don't think so. We're going to be looking at what the market is now, what prices can we get on units that are similar, regardless of what they are assessed at. Are 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms of that size selling for that price? They are. Now, is it assessed equally with the other units in the building? I don't think it is. And my question was in reference to the view, if he was on the same side, because we see that all the time. Sometimes, they're across the hall, they have a different view, it's blocked by another building. And I know on the other side of the hallway, I think the view is like to the courtyard or something. And on his side, the view is, it's a more open. But I think some type of adjustment may be warranted because of the, if the other unit next door is assessed differently, to me, the only difference is the parking space. 20, 30, even 50 square feet are not going to make that much of a difference. So,
what are you proposing?
Well, looking at the unit next door, of course, the assessment is much lower, but, only making an adjustment on parking, it would bring it to a value less than what the appellant is requesting. So I'm struggling, to be honest, on where we can get a number from.
Yeah, I would struggle with lowering it to 560. I mean, I don't think it's gone down from the purchase price, and I think the sales in the building certainly support it. Specifically the third comp, that unit 203, when you look at that and adjust, I mean, that seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. My first inclination was to suggest that we lower to 575 based on the comparable sale that happened. I know it's a little bit, maybe not within the range of time that we would like to see, but at least that's a good comparable to me.
And what about the other parking space?
Well, yeah. See, looking at the sale price only, it would be the 575, but yeah, the other parking space would have to be added. But that's why, to me, it's a little bit of a not quite an easy case to work with.
Mr. Matzkin, unmute your mic.
Yeah, it wasn't up, sorry. The 10,000 for the parking space, but also the height value. I'm not convinced that in a building, mid-rise, that $10,000 a tier going up is appropriate. I mean, we've seen them 2 and 3, but it's the 10,000 for the parking space plus some amount of money between more than 0 and 10,000 that also ought to be added on to comparable sales of the unit directly below. I want to hasten to add that one sale does not make a trend. And that's been brought up many, many, many times. It's indicative, but it's not specific. On the other hand, comparing the next door neighbor, 302, that it sold for a bunch less in 2013, the appellant makes the case, well, maybe they got a good deal. Maybe the developer wanted to get out. It was one of the last ones sold or the last couple. So that's one data point too that makes me uncomfortable. So I'm for also marginally lowering it, but not anywhere close to the 575 figure. I mean, if we lower it, it's marginal. I would agree to I would agree to a marginal lowering, but not definitive, not significant by any means, because I want to keep this small building equalized.
Okay. How about the other two? What do you guys think?
Please see check.
If we just reduce it by 10,000 to account for the parking space?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Just taking into account that they have the additional parking space, so maybe just a $10,000 reduction against the third comp?
But also a height adjustment as well, Mary, you think? Or no? It's marginal, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
You don't mean reduction, you mean addition to that.
Yeah, that's what I meant, I'm sorry. So 5, then maybe, 582? It's not go down 10,000? That's what I meant.
Yeah, I would be okay with that.
582, and what about the floor adjustment?
Seeing that there's no adjustment of view or anything, I don't think that would be applicable to me.
Right, but from a standpoint of equalization, all the other units, the other 65 units all have adjustments. So I think it's taken this particular one and taking it out of equalization.
Congress.
And like I said, I mean, to assess it, I mean, you're talking at 582, I mean, I know we're not looking at a purchase price from 2013, but this is, North Arlington. This property did not go down in value. So
what do you say, Mary? You don't think any adjustments should be made?
no, I struggle with the three comps that are here. And I mean, I think it is equalized in the building.
I agree with that, and I'm not so sure it's equalized with the unit next door. And that's a significant difference for a very, very little difference in physicality. So maybe there's something in the middle of no change and massive change that we could agree to. It's a fine line here. I mean, There's no right or wrong, particularly definitive right or wrong answer. But I would go down a bit.
What is the assessment on the unit next door? I have so many numbers here.
The unit next door is 538,200.
With one less parking space.
Right.
So in theory, 548,200, if all other things were identical. Which pushes me to lower the appellants a bit down, but not to get out of whack with the other direct comp, 203, beneath. I don't, it's a very fine line, again.
Yeah, I would not support the 548. So where are we at?
Well, I'm back to, when we do this, sometimes I know one sale is not enough, but we have made changes based on one sale. And to me, at least, there's a valid sale at 575 where they have 1 or 2 parking spaces. Maybe the building should be reviewed for square footage assessments, not necessarily just for what it sold originally. But, you know, my suggestion would be to go with the 575.
And no adjustments for the floor or the extra parking space?
No.
Okay.
No, for this year.
Okay. I couldn't support that, but
Me neither. The parking space has real value,
yeah.
especially not on the metro line.
All right, Jose, do you want to make a motion and see where it goes?
Sure. Probably won't go since well, I'm not sure if I want to make the motion if I see that there's not going to be any support.
Would people be behind reducing it to 582.9? Which is just accounts for the parking space. I know you had the argument that's maybe not equitable, but across the board, but.
Or maybe a couple thousand more for the height difference. Again, we're fine line, but I would support something like, 582.9 or 585 I could support, but certainly not lower than that, because then it would get out of whack with others. Would anybody like that fine line in the middle of 580s? If not, then it's going to stay where it is, because I don't think Jose's 575 has support, and therefore it would automatically remain as the department has assessed it.
So 585, 584?
Mark?
Well, if you take the 582.9 and even add half the floor adjustment for 5, you're at 587.9.
I would certainly support that as well.
Or we could go with the 575 and add the 10,000 for the extra parking space. We'll come to 585. I mean, we're close. We're there. You know.
I like Jose's that 585. Mark, thumbs up.
Okay.
All right. I'll make a motion that we reduce the assessment to 585. And that's based on the valid sale of 575 and adding another 10,000 for parking space.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second by Mary Hogan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed would be me, so 4-1. The motion carries. It is reduced to 585 even for this year only. All righty. Thank you, sir. Okay, so on that note, it's 10:29. Do we want to, before we do the commercial review, do we want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Can we, and then everybody, when you come back, you'll have your commercial guidelines up. We just re-emailed them to you, so they're right in your queue. And then we will see everybody in 5 minutes.
10:34, okay.
All righty. Ken, can you mute your microphone? Okay, I think we've got everybody back. Yep. All right, Mr. Bailey, take it away. You got to unmute your mic.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. So as usual, we're gonna go over the commercial guidelines that we have prepared for this year. As you see, this year we compiled everything to a book, which we call our commercial guideline book, and that has been made available to the agents and owners who filed reviews this year, and even those who just made requests. The plan is to start having this guideline book available online in the future, starting next year. So it'll be easily available to anyone who want to access it without having to make a request to the department. We didn't make a lot of changes this year, but I think things we should note would be starting with the cap rate. We looked at the bid areas in the county, and for any property that pays into the commercial bid for Boston, Roslyn, and which is now National Landing, we added that bid rate to their cap rate because, again, it is part of their tax rate, and our cap rates are tax loaded. So that's one of the new things this year as far as cap rates, but I don't think we made any major adjustments to office or cap rate. And I think we made a small adjustment to general commercial cap rates based off sales that we saw. It went from 7.25 to, where is it? 7%. And we saw stabilized cap rates for hotels, so those didn't change. I think we made some reductions on the apartment side as well. But the biggest change that you will see is that the bid rate is being added to the commercial cap rates for properties that fall into the bid. So even if there is a mixed-use building, say in Boston, and they have commercial space, that commercial portion also received that bid rate being added to the cap rate because they paid the bid rate tax for that commercial portion. Not all bids applied the bid rate to multifamily. It's actually a few that may do that. So you'll mostly see the bid rate being added to the cap rate on office, commercial space, retail spaces, and I think a few hotels. Again, the guidebook, I mean, we start with apartments and then it goes to general commercial, hotels. We break out the land information. We have some mall notes in there for you because we have been researching those properties a lot more in the past few years. So we've included a section, I think it's a page for the mall notes, and then we finish that up with the office information. As far as as far as BOE cases this year, we have, that's Mark. As far as the BOE cases this year, I think we're in line with past years. It might be slightly down when you compare it to some of 2018. Okay, so when we look at the cases that we received this year, I think we have 231 BOE cases. That's a combination of people who filed to the review level and then filed a BOE, and then people who filed straight to. Now, this year we had an uptick in the number of cases that went straight to the board. I think most of those are from apartment properties. There were some appellants last year that stated that they would no longer file to the department. They would go straight to the board. And they did exactly that. So that's why we have more BOE cases or BOE only cases this year. Again, 2020's cases and 2019 cases are pretty much identical as far as the number that we have. And they're in line with 2017. So going back to the guidebook, apartments, we saw a reduction in the vacancy rates for garden and mid-rise. Rise was the only one that stayed the same at 6%. We still have the non-metro cap rate. We did take some of the older apartments and consolidate them into one category. So you'll see in the past where we might have had an earlier as a category of apartments for garden, now it's 1969 and earlier. The same can be said with mid-rise. We had 1960 and earlier, now it's 1970 and earlier. And we did the same thing with high-rise. Our garden market approach increased based off of sales that we saw last year. The per unit rate for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units for garden apartments is $180,000 per unit. The efficiencies increased to $148,000 per unit. That's an increase from 165 per unit to 180 per unit. And again, that is based off the sales that we saw in the county of these garden properties. A lot of owners of these properties did not report income, and we were able to value these based off of the sales comparison approach. We still value committed affordable properties separately, and even if we have a mixed-use property with some market units and some affordable units, we continue to value those affordable units based off the affordable guidelines and the market units based off the market guidelines. Again, the biggest change for the general commercial side is that the cap rate was increased, I think, a quarter basis point to 7% based off of sales. The commercial condos, we still value those properties based off of the income approach. We did increase the cap rate on those properties to 6.25%. That cap rate is for all commercial condos, whether they're medical or just general commercial use. The cap rate is 6.25%. And we continue to collect income and expense information for these properties as well. Hotels, we looked at the information that we had and we made some adjustments to our guidelines based on expenses. Again, our cap rates for these property types didn't change. They remain flat with the exception of those that fall in a bid. If they fall in the bid, we did add that bid rate to their cap rate. So for example, a full service hotel has a 8% cap rate. If it's in the Boston bid, the cap rate is 8.05%. If it's in the Crystal City / National Landing bid, the cap rate is 8.04%. And if it's in the Roslyn bid, the cap rate is 8.08%. For office, some of the big changes were in the vacancy that we saw being reported. We still have our tiered vacancy, but this year the vacancy is in increments of 5%. The excess vacancy threshold is consistent for all submarkets. So if the vacancy exceeds 25%, then we take into consideration any below the line deductions. That is consistent for all submarkets. Last year we had a tiered excess vacancy threshold for Roslyn. This year we don't have that. The highest vacancy applied is 25%, and if it exceeds that, then we consider the below the line deductions for that property. Our expenses for office continue to be $4 to $14 a square foot, that range. Again, we have our metro and non-metro cap rates, and then we also factor in the bid rate for these properties as well. Other than that, I mean, like I said, we didn't have a a lot of changes occurred this year. We continue to look at the income and expense information that we receive. We rely on publications such as PwC and RARC to compare the data that we receive in our analysis of that data to what the national publications say about our region and the country as a whole when it comes to market data. If you have any questions, I'm available and I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
I'm working on a question.
Okay, take your time.
Well, here it is. I'm not finding it, so you can straighten me out. I'm looking at the hotel motel guidelines, and you give the cap rates for the various kinds of hotels, and then increase them based on if they're in one of the 3 bids. Do you do that? This is not my main question. Do you do that for apartments, or I thought for sure commercial properties, office buildings, and so forth, where you change it based on the bid rate? Because I thought you mentioned it, but I'm not seeing it.
So for apartments, we multifamily properties don't fall in the bid. I think there's a few that do fall in maybe the Crystal City bid or Roslyn bid, but I know like Boston, the multifamily, they don't fall into the bid. If they're mixed use, then they pay bid taxes on the commercial portion. So when we do that valuation, the commercial portion does receive that bid, does have that bid rate included in the cap rate.
Irving, let me stop you there. Okay, and that was my main question. The cap rates go up if a property is in a bid, which means it's if you pardon the expression, a shakier property. The higher the cap rate, the less desirable it is. But the reason you do it is because they pay higher taxes that go to the bid, and that's why, all other things being equal, the cap rate's a little higher, it's a little less desirable. The taxes are higher. Is that right?
Yes, we're accounting for the additional taxes. So when we analyze it and come up with a base cap rate, and then we say, okay, we're going to load
my primary question.
total tax.
So
Correct.
again, in the commercial guidelines, I'm not seeing the similar kind of increase for bid taxes on pages 9 to 12. I mean, if you have it for hotels, you got to have it for office buildings, retail buildings. Yeah? Where is it?
Office is on page 18.
Oh. And there are the bids. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Yeah, it's right in front of me. Thank you.
Well, I'm guessing, I mean, some people may have questions, but, now after you've kind of just briefly gone over this, they can go ahead and email you directly.
Oh, yes, no problem.
Questions and stuff, just because I think it's a lot to, kind of absorb all at once. And I know Greg will probably have some, and I think a lot of times people like to take this year versus last year and compare them and, and see. So
I understand.
I don't want to speak for everybody else on the call, but I would imagine that most of the folks kind of need to absorb it a little. Although we do have cases coming up next week.
Yes, we start cases next week. I think the first day we have commercial condos. We are trying to start with those property types first, especially since the appellants tend to own multiple units. We're trying to, have all those on the same day. We'll see who's available to meet with us.
Right.
Once Rosa start contacting them as well.
I only had one question. On page 17, you have the mall notes.
Yes, sir.
I know that we've seen those different malls in the past, but are those cap rates different than last year, or?
Yes.
And they are lower, or?
They're higher.
Are they higher? Okay.
We increased the mall cap rates based off of the publications. We are expanding. We're trying to expand what publications we see, but as I stated, PwC is one of the few that has cap rate information. And if you look at the page 17, you'll see where we put in their classification methodology that they included in their publication. And based off of this classification methodology, that's how we determine what the cap rates would be for Boston Quarter and Fashion Center. And then even looking at Pentagon Road, Pentagon City, and Market Commons. So the cap rates are higher based off of what the publication said. Let me pull up, just to give you a comparison, let me pull up the guidelines from last year.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or concerns from members?
Go
ahead, Ken. Yeah, no, go.
On page 10, I've never seen this before. The general commercial assessment to sale ratio, they're really all over the place. My question is the classes, PCC 211. I've never seen that before. What is that, PCC?
So page 10?
Yes.
PCC 211 is retail, strip / commercial. If you look on page 9, each category will have the name and the PCC number associated with it. So restaurants are 212, neighborhood centers are 214, and then we have mixed office commercial 219. And this year I know last year we brought up sales, but this year we are also including the sales that we saw throughout the year to give everyone an idea of the sales that we look at when they come in. We try to provide a brief description as well with some of the sales, if we have information on it readily available about what went into that sale, if it was a market sale, if it was an off-market sale, if it was a distressed sale, things of that nature, if it was a sale of interest in the property rather than an actual purchase of the property. And we are including on many of these properties or many of these sales sheets, we try to talk about per room value for hotels or per unit value for apartments, and we'll have the assessment to sales ratio as well. Like you look at page 8, we have the sales date, sales price, the number of units of the apartment that sold, the sales price per unit breakdown, the year the property was built, the effective age in our records for that property. For type, we'll put H for high rise, M for mid rise, and G for garden. And then we put the assessment sales ratio in there as well for you to see. So I think on page 11, we have the sales date with the sales price, and we have the assessment, but we don't have, I don't see the assessment to sales ratio. But you have all the information there for you to be able to calculate it yourself or just reference to.
Last year, we had a lot of discussion concerning the garden apartment and mid-rise. Is the definitions changed any?
No, I mean, the definition is still the same. And I think either last year or the year before last, we put on our guidelines what our story heights were for each property type as far as garden, mid-rise, and high-rise. So if you look at page 6, the expense ratios table, it says garden is 1 to 3 stories, mid-rise is 4 to 8 stories, and high-rise is 9+ stories.
And elevator has no impact or not, or?
Elevator's been taken out.
Okay.
That's good to know up front so that we don't jump into a case I think we have done in previous years, and made a change. So that's a good addition to the chart.
Only reference to an elevated building and non-elevated building is when it comes to parking. And it says elevated buildings with garage, the spaces are $50 to $150 per month. And then parking non-garage or carport is $25 to $75 per month. I think that'll probably change next year where it's just really garage parking versus non-garage parking.
All right, any other questions? No? I can't see Mark or Mary, so.
So I know Jose asked about the malls. So
Oh, here we go.
the Boston Mall, I think all the mall cap rates, so Boston Mall cap rate last year, that increased by a quarter point from 19 to 2020. And Fashion Center Mall last year, we were at 6.75, and we went to 7.25. I think a lot of that had to do with even the decision we made last year during the review process.
Okay.
Parking. Fashion Center anchors increased by 50 basis points. Pentagon Row and Market Commons, we actually have those more in line with like actual retail. So their cap rates are the only ones that decreased, and they decreased by quarter point.
Okay.
Yes. Costco stayed flat. That remained. I'm sorry, Costco did decrease by 10 basis points. So those were some of the changes. In land sales, we did have a few land sales that we took a look at, and so the land rates for commercial, they're valued on the FAR rate, increased by $5. So when they were last year, they were $60 per square foot for office and for some of the site plans. And this year they are $65 a square foot. And that's for Metro. And non-Metro increased by $5 as well. So it increased from $50 to $55.
Questionnaire, the instructions or forms that you sent to the commercial properties, did that change much? I know we had a lot of discussion about some of the definitions or instructions that came up in the arguments quite a bit.
We went through and cleaned up a few of the, we went through to see what directions were confusing or what we can make some, we can do a little cleaning up. So the directions that we provided are the same. If there were some words that were confusing, we try to remove those words and make it more clear what we were asking for. I think this year we also have more we separated out more of the other income categories or more of the other pass-through categories to try to be more specific about what we were asking. As always, when we ask for miscellaneous revenue or miscellaneous expenses, we ask for detail, and oftentimes we don't get that. So where we were able to actually break that up into subcategories, we did that. Especially you'll see with pass-throughs, we asked for real estate tax pass-throughs, operating expense pass-throughs, and we were more specific about things like that. But you continue to get the directions with the INEs. I think it's 4 pages of directions. We're always available if you have any questions, and we continue to reach out to owners and agents about any INEs that we receive in which we need a little bit more detail about the items or the expenses that they report. So that's always an ongoing situation where we're verifying the data and just trying to make sure we're using the most accurate data as possible.
All right. Anything else from anybody? Comments, concerns? As Mr. Bailey said, I mean, you can email him or call him if once you go through it, you have additional questions and he can point you in the right direction.
Yes.
All right. I can't see Mark or Mary, but I assume.
Yeah, it says my camera's on, but.
Okay. All right, well, I believe that concludes our business then for today. And we can adjourn and we will see everybody back on Tuesday, June 30th.
Yes.
At 9 a.m. All right? Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next week.